Fuck yeah. Okay,
I
so
don't know where you
it
find the
does.
time, man.
Oh, I think I was on standby yesterday, and I threw that together. My favorite parts, you're gonna have to go back and watch because I did it very intentionally. So Brant Clark has that move at the end where the music kind of like goes in reverse, and he does his like spin move like right at the reverse, and then Kopitar sends it home. There's a goal right when like the goal horn sounds in the intro music too. So that part was intentional. I hope it wasn't wasted on anybody. I feel like I'm explaining a joke now, but anyway, welcome to Five Hole Fantasy Hockey. I'm your host today, TJ Branson, Maddie K in the chat on the feed. What's up, dude?
I am glad to be here, my man. Last week, we Jay and I held the fort down, and excited to do the show with you. And that intro, come on, the
How
video,
about it?
I love it.
Threw a little something together. I hope you guys are digging it. For those of you on YouTube, did a little hype video to get her started. You guys want to get in touch with us? We're on Twitter at FHF Hockey. We're in the Fantasy Hockey Discord, blew past 2,700, and we're working our way towards 2,800. So get in before your league mates do. How about it? Today we got the week preview, the matchup 6 preview. Jordan Binnington absolutely destroyed my hopes of even coming close week 5. So how you doing in your leagues, Matty?
So far, so good. Listener League, I believe I'm fifth out of 12 in Listener League right now, but I'm third in points. So it's just one of those things. And in my home league, Banger Cats, I am third in a 16 teamer. So far, so good. I've made a lot of moves. Honestly, there's some names on this list that I have either now own or I used to own. So I've been a little bit more active to start the year than I usually do. So we'll see if that's going to pan out.
You know what I got to get better at is making my ads either during the show or before the show, because being a fantasy hockey podcast, playing in leagues with people that listen to your fantasy hockey podcast, it sucks because, you know, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z later on in the episode. And by the time I get to the waiver wire tomorrow, they're gone. So I really got to start planning ahead like that.
Yeah, we're talking our book basically all the time.
Yo, counterparts, dude. Okay, so Maddie's a fan. Yeah, Counterparts dropped a surprise EP, and that kind of set the tone for my whole week. Let's get into. I'm getting distracted so easily tonight. The week review. I want to talk about a few things other than Jordan Binnington just shitting on my hopes. Letting in 8. I do need to vent a little bit. 8.
That's tough.
Why did
I'm
the coach
facing a
not
guy that
fucking pull
started
him?
Binnington. So
I started Binnington.
Yeah. Universe has to balance itself out, right?
Well, if that were true, Olmark would be doing really well. He's my other goalie, and I don't think that's going so hot. Yeah, not so hot. Well, I guess they took the win, so it is what it is. Standout performances that are worth talking about. Noah Hannafin had himself a week. Bo Horvat as well, kind of reigniting some confidence in the New York Islanders. I still think largely they are what they are, but you know, a bit of a mirage. Connor Hellebuck, and I mean just the Jets in general, because Nikolai Ehlers is next on my list here too. They're the first team in NHL history to win 14 of their 15 games. And Hellebuck, at the time of writing this, I assume he got the win tonight because all those tweets were like, you know, they got 14 wins. I don't know if it's a shutout, but he's got 2 shutouts this week, 3 wins, now 4. And just an incredible performance from him. Ehlers having himself an absolute week, got another goal tonight, which I guess brings him up to like 5 goals in the last 5 games played. Nutsy performance.
It's been some great streamers from Winnipeg, and a number of them have panned out into at least medium-term holds right now. A couple of them very famously have not. But Ehlers is definitely one of the guys you want to be keeping.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're a wagon. You got to get any part of that you can.
Yeah, there are a few other guys too. I mean, Stamkos, I will say, listen, they played 2 games so far. I'm not including whatever they've done tonight to this point. So through 2 games earlier in this week, Stamkos has 2 goals, power play point, 7 shots, 2 hit, a block. Listen, the Predators may still suck, but Stamkos didn't last week. He actually helped your team, or earlier this week. He's shooting 2.1% at 5v5. That is not going to stay that way all year, not with the deployment, not with the people that he plays with. So it's bleak still, but it's getting a little bit lighter.
They shut out Utah tonight. And
Perfect.
Stamkos with a power play assist. I'm trying to see what else he got. Box score stats are kind of limited here. Let's see. Stamkos, 2 shots, 1 hit, power play assist. Not bad.
That's all right.
Starting to wake up.
He is. He's starting to. Right? He's making a little impact every single night. What we haven't seen is any sort of those breakout games yet, but consistently hitting the score sheet. Speaking of a guy that's doing exactly that, Dylan Larkin. We put the ownerships up here, I guess, jokingly. Stamkos 95%, Larkin 93%. I don't know where these guys aren't owned, but Larkin, through 3 games this week, he's been doing this all year. But he's got 4 goals and assists. 3 of those are power play goals, 2 of them game winners. 10 shots. You do not own him for periffs. He shoots. He has great deployment, and he gives you power play points. That's what he does. But he's been so hot. 9 goals, I think, to start the year off right now for Larkin. And they have a hot power play.
Shut out tonight. 2 more shots tonight. Yeah.
2. I mean, again, that's a rough Saturday. Think about who you didn't put in the lineup for Larkin to go in and give you 2 shots and nothing else. Jack Eichel. Another week. You know what? We talk so much about deployment and great schedules and who we can stream in. The Vegas Golden Knights played 2 games this week. So one of the worst schedules. And Jack Eichel said, who cares?
Who cares?
Right? A goal, 5 apples, 2 power play points, 6 shots. I mean, he's got 22 points in 14 games. Monster start. He's shooting 17% on 5v5. So that's definitely spicy. Their team, Sky High PDO. The rest does look fine, though. I mean, his IPP, power play IPP, shooting percentage, all that stuff is Jack Eichel land. It's not, none of it's really balloons. So it'll be interesting to see the pace that they hold a player like him through the rest of the year.
There was a funny exchange in the Discord. I think it was Purple Puddin who said it. It was like Buffalo just incubates players for other teams. They're watching Sam Reinhart have 50-goal seasons, Jack Eichel on his way to a 100-point season, and they're working on their power play. They're
tragically
true. It out. Cold weeks. Kyle Connor surprisingly held off the score sheet for much of this week. He did have 2 apples minus whatever he did tonight. I'm checking right now. Also looking at Nick Suzuki, just a bunch of cardio this week. Again, I don't know what Montreal did today. I wrote these notes earlier today. Checking in. I don't think Susie had anything. No, just that's
outside of Caulfield and. Right? Outside of Caulfield. Gallagher's been a little bit more relevant recently, I will say that. But outside of Caulfield, him, Matheson on the back end, Montembeault, the airs out of that balloon. There's just not much in Montreal to get too excited about, certainly from a fantasy standpoint. What was really odd last week, cold start. I mean, Leon Draisaitl finished the previous week on an absolute tear, and then crickets through 2 games this week. No points, -1, 2 shots, 2 shots across 2 games, and a block.
Scored on Lankinen.
Yep,
they scored on Lankinen tonight.
Playing tonight. I do own Lankinen, so I'm kind of hoping they keep that rather tight, but we'll see. But yeah, Leon not giving you what you needed after what he did the previous week. Jason Robertson, I know we've talked a lot about him through the beginning of the season, but through his last 4, he's got 1 assist. 10 shots, 5 hits, 3 blocks. That's great for periffs, but that is not why you drafted or start Jason Robertson. He's on a 48-point pace. He's got the same time on ice. He's got the same power play time on ice. There's a lot of similarities between previous seasons and this season, but Dallas feels like an above average to really good real life team that's going to really struggle to provide a lot of relevant, viable fantasy options. In an actually, aside from an ADP, a draft standpoint, I actually prefer to have a team like Dallas that has so many viable streaming options where these players have slipped in ownership, where we're going to be able to weave them in and out of the season. Even a guy like Thomas Harley is probably on a lot of waivers right now. So that's going to help us down the stretch, because if I'm not mistaken, Dallas has a really good schedule in the latter, say, third of the season and through the playoffs. So
while we're on it, it came up again in the Discord today. Is Pete DeBoer, is his seat starting to warm up a little bit? I know they're still treading water in terms of where they are in the standings and as a team as a whole, but so many underperformers, it feels like he's just not getting the same juice out of his stars.
Yeah, expectations are sky high there too, right? This isn't just sort of the first year that Dallas is supposed to be competitive. They were cup favorites last year, right? Let alone this year. So, again, we can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to spread the depth around and the scoring around, and they'd rather have a whole bunch of 60 and 70 point guys than rely on 3 or 4 guys that score 80 to 90 or 100. But that's maybe good in real life, but going to be tragic to own in fantasy. So we'll see what they do along the rest of the way. But I mean, we're talking about a lot of really high drafted players here. Pasternak's another one. 2 games this week, 2 assists, 8 shots, and a hit. So the thing with Pasternak, right? 2 assists, 2 games, fine, he's point a game. But his last goal was October 26th. And he's on a 71 point pace right now versus, I mean, the last 2 years, they were both 110 plus. So it's okay, but it's certainly not what you paid for. His 5v5 shooting is way down. The rest is pretty consistent. So I think this is more of like the team ceiling is being exposed a little bit with him, but he's still going to keep getting his looks. I just don't necessarily know if 100 to 110 points is a viable option right now. Maybe it's more like 80 to 90 and hopefully, 40 plus goals, but not necessarily where his ceiling was earlier.
It's an uphill battle, yeah.
This is painful, man. I'm going to say Lucas Dostal, this was our 0G hero at the beginning of the year. He is absolutely wearing his ADP over the last 3 games, which I guess is when you take a few steps back and look at these things objectively, certainly after a few weeks of a player cooling down, like this was probably Thanos level of inevitable when you look at what he's done over the previous years. But I mean, 3 straight games, 3 losses, 14 goals combined. And all of the nerd stats that we were raving about with him, I mean, his last 3 games, he was a combined minus 4.3 goals saved above average. So like a really terrible start, 855, 856, I think, something like that. So we're not saying run out and drop Lucas Dostal, but Gibson is coming back, if not back already.
Yeah, he was backing up tonight, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, Dostal certainly earned the right to more starts there, but you start losing 3 games in a row like that, and I think it was like timing. 5. Yeah, it just is, because it's going to give an opportunity to a guy like Gibson when he wouldn't have sniffed that for the past basically month, right?
Yeah. If Gibson came back last week, right, like Gibson would not have even, like these 3 starts, they would have all went to Dostal no matter what. But now that you have this 3 game cold streak, they're going to be thinking, all right, what can Gibson give us? Like, besides the paycheck he's collecting, he deserves some starts.
Well, it kind of shows how fluid some of these situations are, right? Like I'd say I'm Buffalo adjacent, I'm Toronto adjacent as well too. So, I mean, what's been going on there, this idea of we're coming in with a 1A and a 1B and it's Walls, Ned and Stolarz, like, you can see clearly what's happening there, right? There's confidence in one goaltender and there's waning confidence in another. And they are just riding with the player that's playing well. So it's just interesting how these parallels work across the league.
I mean, a lot of the times with goalies, you get what you paid for, and it depends on the week. But some weeks you're running away laughing, and other weeks, like Binnington, 102 ADP. Lucas Dostal was what he waiver wire more than likely
200, something like that,
if drafted at all. Exactly. So you get what you pay for. Most of the time, it's just like a sliding scale in terms of consistency. So the guys at the top, save Saros, even though slow starts seem to be his thing. More often than not, you get lucky. And hell, we're talking about guys like Draisaitl, Pasternak, Jason Robertson here, who are having equally as cold, weeks. Austin Matthews played 1 game this week and is not back till Tuesday. So like, some weeks you just get fucked, no matter what position it is. But I wasn't there for last week's streamer suggestions, but it looks like Alex Laferriere did pretty well for you.
Yeah, I had Laferriere. I mean, through the couple games that we tracked before we started prepping for the show, he's got 3 assists, so he hasn't scored, but 3 apples, a power play point, 4 shots and a hit. So he definitely helped your team last week. I don't quite remember who Jay had put on there, so we'll have to connect in with Jay and we can update this document a little bit later.
You're keeping your hot streak moving. Some storylines and injury news. Starting off with injuries, I said Austin Matthews is going to be back. He's eligible tomorrow, but Toronto doesn't play till Tuesday, so look for him to get back. He was skating today. John Gibson was backing up tonight. Tristan Jarry recalled from the AHL. Blast from the past. It feels like when I saw that news, I was like, holy shit, yeah, I forgot about him. That easy. Brock Besser did not play today. Took a hit from Tanner Janot, who Friedman said it sounds like 3 games, but I don't know if the official ruling has come out. So we're gonna call it 3 games. I trust.
Yeah,
Trust the
match
report.
penalty too. You don't see those very
Yeah.
often. Deserved. I
Well,
mean, totally.
yeah,
But
yeah, and that's what you get too. Like there were some deep leagues people kind of like having pain points about Janot, and it came up in the same kind of conversation as Mishkov, and that's one of my next headlines here is Mishkov, scratched 2 games in a row. That's kind of like when you draft or pick up a player like Tanner Janot or are drafting a Philadelphia Flyer, just in general, you kind of go into it with the expectation that somebody like Janot is going to get suspended. Somebody like Tom Wilson is going to get suspended. Somebody on the Flyers is going to see a couple games in the press box. That's what you take. That's what that I feel like we knew that coming in, and it seems to be like around the water cooler that people are unnecessarily shook by Mishkov getting benched. And I mean, we didn't know when it was going to be. We just knew that it was going to happen, that he was going to get this press box treatment. And I guess it's good that he's getting it out of the way early. And hopefully the rest of the season we can just watch Mishkov play. But again, back to Janot, that's what's going to happen. We're going to have to find our hits somewhere else, I guess. I don't know how long it's going to last, but Nick Foligno's back on the top line with Connor Bedard, Grubauer's day-to-day. Marchman was a game-time decision. I don't know if he played or not.
I don't believe he did, no.
No, still out. Well, there you go. He did not play tonight. Alex Turcotte is on IR. Samuel Hellenius made his NHL debut tonight on the 4th line. Jacob Chikrin's back. Mark Stone is out. Surprise, surprise, right?
Wah, wah,
Another
wah.
one. Another one. Like you draft with the expectation that he's going to get hurt. But he was leading the NHL in points for a little bit, so that's fun. And Nick Waugh on the top line there. 1 goal, 1 assist in his first period on the top line. So it's hard for anybody in Vegas not to be hot as fuck right now. And Paratoron in the chat right now saying Hellenius got a point in his first game. So welcome to the show, bud. To you, Paratoron, and to Hellenius. Welcome to the NHL. Day-to-day. What do you got here about Nick Waugh?
No, he's just that Stone's day-to-day. I mean, Waugh's up on line 1,
right.
power play 1. I mean, 20 minutes. The guy hasn't sniffed 20 minutes, obviously, since last night. But 20 minutes of time on ice last night. They have an amazing schedule this week. We'll be talking about him later.
There you go. Some headlines, man. I wrote at this time, Winnipeg was 13-1-1. Now they're 14-1-1. Kind of touched on Winnipeg already, but they're just killing it. I mean, I don't know if the wheels are going to fall off the wagon, but they are a wagon. And it's happening. And Canes, same thing. Like, I'm pretty sure they beat my Flyers tonight. We gave them a run for their money. No, they didn't play the Flyers.
They're playing Colorado tonight.
Avs are winning. How about it?
So there was a lot of people in the chat that were asking start sits, and a lot of them were Koch in Colorado. And I mean, just the way the Canes play, they're going to win. I mean, even if they win, odds are they may, but they don't allow a lot. And Colorado is going to get theirs. So it just seemed like a bad setup. I mean, unless wins are, outsized in terms of what you get for points or something. But it just seemed like a bit of a setup. Really hot team going in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that game's just about 2 periods done. So I'll keep my eyes on that one. Mishkov got the torch treatment. We touched on that one. Matt Grzelcyk on Pittsburgh's top power play. I don't know, again, the longevity of this one, or if, Letang just got done an even strength shift and he was kind of gassed and didn't go out for the power play, or if this is by design. But if that's something that continues, are you interested at all in Grzelcyk here?
I really can't say that I am. I mean, it feels like there's 2 other defensemen that have a lot more pedigree than he does. And I mean, whether they just put a bunch of numbers in a Yahtzee type thing and throw them out and see who comes out. I don't know how they're doing this, but Carlson's still there. Letang's still there. That is pretty cool about Malkin getting dual.
Malkin's center left wing now.
Last night or night before, he had a really big game winner.
That's huge. I have never seen Malkin dual eligible.
That's right.
And I mean, that's huge. You got a little bit of flexibility. Moving a center only to a wing spot, huge. Absolutely huge. Yeah, on Grzelcyk, I wanted to say this is what Torts should be doing is like instead of benching a Letang or Eric Carlson, he's just giving the top power play spot away, and that's what you could do, Torts. All right,
Yeah, take
don't
note.
mind it.
Right, we've got Val Nichushkin coming back this week,
we do.
November 15th versus the Caps. So, I mean, everybody's talking about this. A lot of leagues. I drafted him in one of the leagues I'm in, stashed him on IR. So what do we actually think is going to happen here, right, Val? They've obviously been struggling in Colorado to keep any sort of consistency with people moving in and out of the top six and out of that top power play. So I don't know how long it's going to take him to get acclimated, but he should be a lock for top six, and he will find his way back on that top power play. It might not happen right away, but he just does things that nobody else on that team has the ability to do with his frame and the way he moves and the places on the ice that he goes. So, I mean, again, barring anything with his health, that could be a really big add because they kind of need a guy like him ASAP.
This is their second line right now. Yoel Kiviranta, Casey Middlestat, Logan O'Connor. So, yeah, he's a lock for the top six. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say that's keeping him off the top power play is going to be the return of Ross Colton. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know if who's going to get that, because there's going to be a little bit of run for Nichushkin to kind of reclaim that spot as the net front guy on power play one. He's got these 4 weeks left, 2 to 4 weeks left. I think Colton was 4 to 6, right? And we're about a week and a half into that. So he's got some time to really, he could put his mark on it and say, all right, this is mine, but Colton was doing pretty good in that spot. So I wonder if, the big deterrent from Colorado is a favorite to win the cup or anything, is they're kind of a one-line team. If you had...
Oh, they definitely are a one-line team.
And with Landeskog and his, apparent step back and recovery and things like that, not that he was going to be a huge, box scorer kind of assist. He wasn't really going to be raising the ceiling of the team or anything, but he's probably a great locker room guy, veteran, kind of a staple for the team and everything. So Druin coming back, I'm not super not sold on Druin. Maybe he's a middle six guy. They'll find a spot for him. But Colton coming, as soon as this team is healthy, man, they're gonna. I think it's gonna be a lot more impactful than what I'm looking at right now. With that bottom six is just gross.
It's atrocious. When the ice starts to shrink later on in the season into the playoffs, I really don't know. We look at Colorado and think of what they've been, but they just might not be quite that version of themselves. I mean, again, we've got a trade deadline coming up. We got a whole season to play. Who knows what they look like in terms of their final form by the time the season's over. But right now they look very thin. They have all world talent in about 4 places, right? And that's all they need. 3 places for sure. So,
yeah. And I mean, if we're talking bottom of the world, Georgiev, so you can make it.
Yes, that's right. Again, universe has to balance itself out. TJ, I'm excited. Ottawa has a power play this year. So they are 4th in the league, almost 31%. They got 13 power play goals on 42 attempts. Last year, we talked about and lamented about Ottawa's power play a lot. They ended up the year 22nd, and I feel that was with a bit of a push at the end of the year to kind of, paint the clothes there, as opposed to where they were kind of dredging the bottom most of the year. 18% last year. We said 31 this year. So who's making a difference aside from Stützle, aside from Tkachuk? Batherson. He's got 3 power play goals. Sanderson is making a huge impact. He's got 1 goal. He's got 7 power play assists. So both of those guys are really helping to drive an Ottawa power play that's at least making them competitive. I mean, it's always, they need a good start, and they always have a terrible start. At least this year, I want to say they're 500, if not a game below maybe, but they're competitive, and the division that they're in is going to afford them that luxury because nobody's really running away in the East right now.
Jake Sanderson is huge on that power play. He's on a 50 power play point pace right now, and he's just, there's so many touches that happen, and Ottawa's such a fun team to root for, so I'm happy this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, Ottawa has a great power play and Washington doesn't. So we've talked about how good Washington's been this year. They're I think they're 9-4. I think they lost their last game. Plus 12 or 13 goal differential. And they're doing this while they're sporting the league's dead last power play at like 9%. I think they've scored 4 power play goals all year long. So
2 more tonight.
They got 2 power play goals tonight.
They did. So
okay, so they're up to 6, and they're probably still sitting about 11% on the year, which is 31st or 32nd. So they were 18th last year, kind of middle of the road, but 20%, like that 20% number, that's where kind of the Mendoza line for power play. You got to be scoring on at least 1 of 5. You look at the teams that's consistently rank above that year over year over year versus the teams that are below that, and even this year. Now, they did that 18th in the league last year with Ovi literally never moving. He stayed in the same spot. He played the entire power play. So something's got to give there in terms of that power play being fixed. But the question of how they're doing it, I mean, they have a top 8 PK, so that's certainly going to help. They have a top 3 team shooting percentage, so that's sure as hell going to help. So all that's helping to mask it. Washington plays the most games over the next month, them and a couple other teams. So I'd be staying in the Flames with them.
You got to hold McMike right now. Washington Capitals also 3rd in the league in goals for per game. This 8-game showing tonight really helped out. And 2 of them are on the power play. So still doing a lot at even strength. 3 hot starts to believe in. This is a new segment. Like every week we want to, and we'd love some, maybe not feedback, but some suggestions. And I'm saying 3 hot starts, but that's because we expected Raj to be here. So 2 hot starts to believe in. But every week, if you guys want to like throw something at us, some sort of like theme that we can do. What do we have? 3 hot starts to believe in, and 3 what? There was another one with that you threw out there that was good. That we'll hit on that one next week. But guys that are off to incredible starts, maybe unbelievable starts that we believe in. And my guy is Mikael Granlund, somebody I've been beating the drum for literally all season. What I got on him is that, one of the big worries, I think it was actually Parataran asked this one, with Celebrini coming back, are we worried about Granlund's ice time? And I said, I don't think so. The time on ice is going to come from somewhere, but I don't think you're going to pull it from that kind of performance. His time on ice has actually gone up since Celebrini has come back. 13 of his 16 points are primary points. His on-ice shooting percentage, super healthy, under 10%. That's exactly what you want to see. Shots on goal per 60 is up 65% over last year. All strengths shots on goal per 60 is the highest that's ever been. We're talking higher than the 69 points in 81 games that he had in Minnesota in 16-19. Like his shots on goal was under 70. His primary points back then was 82%. 17-18, he put up 67 and 77. 70% were primary points, and his shots on goal actually did hit over 8.01. 18-19, great 3-year stretch for him in Minnesota here. He put up 49 points in 63 games played. 82% of his points were primary. Real big play driver, getting in on all sorts of stuff. Shots on goal were right around 6.5, 6.44 per 60. And 2021-22 Nashville, he had 64 points in 80 games. And if you think back, this was that huge unsustainable year for Forsberg, for Duchesne. Like both of those guys hit over 40 goals. So there were a lot of assists to go around. Granlund had 53, only 11 goals that year. And that's where he saw his primary points percentage go down to 59%. Still a fantastic year, but also his shots on goal per 60. When you're playing with guys like Yossi, with Forsberg, I think back then, was Arvidsson still there? I can't remember. Was he?
Yep, he was
Los
there.
Angeles King
Obviously,
at that
Duchesne.
point?
Yep.
Yeah, there were a lot of shots, and the pie can only get so big before nobody has a slice left. His offensive play driving seasons were those 2 or 3 big years in Minnesota, 16-17, 17-18. He had a 70-point pace and a 71-point pace in those years. He's beating every single metric this year. 81% of his points this year are primary points. The only year that beats that is 18-19, where he put up 49 and 63. He then got traded to Nashville, so I can say that this is a career high, 81% primary points. Shots on goal this year per 60 are 8.8, another career high. Average time on ice is over 21 minutes, career high. His power play time on ice is almost 3.5 minutes, career high. His career shooting percentage is 9.49. This year, he's shooting 12.7. Like, it's not a huge worrisome stat, but it's, 21.4% shooting on the power play is where a lot of that shooting percentage inflation is coming from. And that's where 3 of his 6 goals are coming from. He's also seeing the best power play shots on goal per 60 of his career. The closest comparable was that 17-18 Granlund, who shot close to 27% on the year for the full year. So if we're thinking, 21.4 on the power play, that's not sustainable for 82 games. He did it already. He actually did more unsustainable than that for a whole year. His even strength is 9.3, not far off his career norms at all. And the reason that I would think that maybe some of this is going to come down, 84% IPP, that's higher. His career IPP is 64. Considering he had 72% IPP last year in San Jose, I don't know, like, how much space can you really give that? Like, should you be considering his whole career or what he's done in San Jose? So it's a much softer differential than most. Like, I ran this analysis on all sorts of what he did. I'm going to throw it up on the YouTube here because reading it would just be brutal.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There's a lot here. And Maddie was chirping me before we went on because my notes were a bit of a, what'd you say, dissertation.
Yeah, it was a mini thesis.
So I'll click the highlights here. His all strengths stats this year versus his career. His time on ice is up 17%. Corsi 4 per 60, close to 15. Goals for 15. Expected goals for 15. Scoring chances, high danger goals for, low danger goals for. This is a big one, up 86%. Individual goals per 60, up 82. And IPP is up 30% versus his career. Shooting percentage is up 30%. There's a lot here that looks up, but I think a lot of it has to do with, like, I feel like you can explain it away because the shots have gone up. The time on ice has gone up. His on ice goals for has gone up, due in large to him being on there because he's scoring a lot of them. But I think with a change in deployment, utilization, and thinking about what he's done in San Jose, like, think about his role in Nashville, right? Like, are we using career averages? This is a different role that he's playing. So a lot of what he's doing, I can find ways to, there's no better way to say it, but like cherry pick the data, right? Like, oh yeah, he's scoring more goals, but his shots have also gone up. Oh, his shooting percentage has gone up, but he's also getting more, better line mates. Like, there's ways for me to explain everything away. And what I'm seeing with Granlund, like, there's so many stats that are still sustainable that when I see one or two that are, 30% off his career norms, it doesn't freak me out that much. So 87-point pace right now for Mikael Granlund. I think it's an easy bet to take the under on that. 71-point pace last year, his first year in San Jose. I think we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't be surprised if he does flirt with point per game on the whole year. And 75 feels like an easy over to bet. Like, if we were to put the line at 75, Maddie, where would you wind up?
I mean, I'd be pretty close on 75. I still think that's a pretty spicy bar for him to chin over the course of the whole year. But I mean, if he's a 65 to 75 point player, he brings a lot of peripheral value as well too. So, you start to slowly get into Timo Meier light territory with a player like that, right? When you look at the bangs that he brings in. But I mean, I look at when production starts to expand and there's no real solution that jumps out immediately, you start to look at the deployment change you talked about, the time on ice change you talked about, and the power play deployment you talked about. All those things are like mini breaths into the balloon that like increase his capacity to produce value for us. If all of those other things had stayed consistent and yet his production had ballooned so much that we were talking about, it would be pretty sus, right? But when you look at, well, of course he's doing better. I mean, yes, he has to go out and actually convert, but he's being given more opportunity in better spots on the ice with better players to do what he's doing. So I'm fully on board with that. I own him in one league. What I thought might be a couple weeks stream has turned into much more than that so far.
Yeah, I burned I had him earlier in the year, and then I dropped him because San Jose had a piss poor schedule the next week, thinking, oh, I'm just riding a hot streak out here. He kept going. and he actually got dropped again. I think maybe for the same reason, but I burned a first waiver priority on him. Very competitive league, the Content Creators League with guys like Apples and Genos, Fantasy Tips in there, Data Drafts, Dauber guys. So I had to get my guys.
And the
But look at
chef's
this, like
is center right in terms
yeah,
of dual eligibility. Like just
yep, I'll take
perfect.
it. So your guy, let me get the thing up here, and we can use that.
Tee me up.
Have
There
at
we
it.
go. So we are going to talk about Matt Boldy today. And the journey for Matt Boldy is he was being drafted in about the 5th round, 4th or 5th round, maybe 6th round, depending on the league that you were in. So from 5th round to currently in the banger league I'm in, 5th overall. I mean, we do count game winning goals and he's got a bunch of them. So that's inflating his value a bit. But Matt Boldy is certainly elevated his play. And we're going to take a quick peek underneath the hood to understand maybe why he's doing that. Because we have a pretty good sample size for Boldy now over the last 3 to 4 years. And we've watched him grow into more responsibility. He's grown into more deployment, certainly more ice time. And we're starting to see the outcome of that bear fruit over the last, I would say, 12 months. So 21 and 22, this was a 65 to 66 point player. That elevated last year. So he played 75 games. He scored 69 points, which put him on a 75-point pace. And this year, he's legging that performance up again. So through 14 games, again, notwithstanding what's happened today, 14 games played, he's got 8 goals, 7 assists. 4 of those goals are game-winning goals, 7 power play points. 4 of those power play points are goals. So it puts him on an 88-point pace. The thing now is he's playing 19 and a half minutes a game, 75% of the power play time on ice on power play 1 with Kaprizov. They're the 10th best power play in the league at a little over 22%. And the thing is, like I said, 19 minutes of time on ice per night, 4 minutes or slightly above that is power play time. Like he's just on the ice a ton. So the thing we love about Boldy, one of the things I love about Boldy is he shoots the puck. So 50 shots on goal, 3.6 per game. Now, the previous 2 years, he's averaged about 3. And so we've certainly seen an elevation of about, in this case, 20% in terms of his shot volume. He's also converting at a slightly higher rate. So 16% this year, career 13. So there's no real alarm bells there. 5-on-5. Now, this is where you would sort of expect to see a little bit of weakness in Boldy's game. 5-on-5, he's shooting 8.1% this year, a little over 10% last year. That's certainly being offset by how well they're doing on the power, or he's doing on the power play, and that shooting percentage boost we talked about. So it's kind of a bit of a balancing act. When you get players that basically get all the ice time, power play deployment, line 1 or line 2, their power play deployment and efficiency and even strength are not going to be consistent over the whole year. What we want is to see as one starts to maybe cool off a little bit, the other starts to heat up. And that's what we're seeing with Boldy. So his IPP has been steady. High 60s has basically been what he's done over the last 3 years. His power play IPP is a bit spicy. It's about 77%. But like TJ, he's more involved in the power play this year. Like Matt Boldy is a more focal point of Minnesota's offense. It still runs through Kaprizov than he was over the previous 2 years. So I would certainly not balk at seeing his power play IPP jump a little bit. Even strength. So what's he actually doing, right? We said peek underneath the hood. Let's take a look at some of his stats. So at even strength, he's 47th in the league at individual expected goals per 60. And last year he was 70th, right? So a bit of an uptick there. 32nd in the league this year, individual Corsi 4 per 60. Last year he was 15th. So this is a player that drives possession and shot attempts pretty consistently. His scoring chances 4 per 60 and high danger, that's where he's dropped off this year compared to last year. He was actually really strong in that category last year, top 6, I believe, in the league. This year he's about 180th. So the thing with Boldy, and those were rate stats, like this guy played 81 games in 22. He played 75 games in 23. He plays 19 and a half, 20 minutes a night. Like we need to be looking at count stats with him because he gets all the deployment. It's not like there's some future revelation where Matt Boldy is going to somehow play 23 minutes a night. Like this is about as much as he's going to play. So we kind of just want to see what's he doing with sort of the best ice time he could be getting. So 15 points puts him 35th in the league. Those 50 shots tie him with Tage Thompson at 11th in the league. You start to look at those count stats. He's 24th in the league in individual expected goals. He's T27 in individual Corsi 4, tied with Marchand, tied with Nylander. This guy's a volume shooter. He does a lot of it from the perimeter, a lot of it from distance. While he's on the ice at 5v5, that's where the struggle is going to be, because he does not play with Kaprizov 5v5. He plays with Jeek and he plays with Marcus Johansson. So 5v5, that's not going to be necessarily the strength of his game. If he ever did have access to Kaprizov at even strength, like we saw last year, his ceiling would skyrocket. Like last year in Q1, he had the same line mates he has this year. He was on a 57-point pace. He was playing about 17 minutes a night. Late Q2 through the end of the season, he was elevated with Jeek and Kaprizov, and he held an 80-point pace the rest of the season. So we've seen him do it. He's just doing that 80-plus point pace now while still being on line 2. So all in all, what are we buying right now with Matt Boldy, right? So you're buying an option on the Minnesota power play, staying T10 or better rest of the season. They were 10th last year. They're 10th this year, right? We like the parts involved. I'd feel pretty good about that portion of what I'm buying with Matt Boldy. You already know what his 5v5 production is, and he's been holding point per game and above pace while he's been struggling a bit at 5v5 with his line mates. And I feel you're holding a longer, much more, I would say, out of the money option on some line 1 access to Minnesota if for some reason something happened to that right wing position with Zuccarello, injury, performance. I mean, it's certainly not performance early on. He's got like 13 points, but he has missed some games, like 13 last year, 22, he was pretty healthy, 21, he missed 12. So, I mean, all in all, Boldy's doing what you want him to be doing, certainly more than you would have expected early on. And he's still doing it with what I feel is some upside in his even strength and 5v5 play.
No, we're past the point of like, oh, is he playing with Kaprizov? Because he is starting to become his own player. So I love what you said about kind of like throwing out the rate stats when we've topped out in terms of deployment. That's a great way to put it. The rate stats are kind of like for building future predictions and things like that. When it comes to, I remember Andrei Kasha back in the day. Oh, he's 6th in the league in shots on goal per 60. If he gets first line minutes, he's only got 13 minutes right now. Like, he's going to be great. It doesn't matter anymore when we're talking about guys that are, of this caliber. Looking at his shots on goal per 60, like last year, he was a shooter too, 248 shot pace. He's up close to 300 this year. So shot pace is up 20%. Like you said, fantastic player and man, I love me some Matt Boldy. I love Minnesota. Best jerseys in the league. Who were we talking about earlier? Pasternak. I want to put him on Tuesday trends this week. So if there's anybody else you guys like for trends, let me know and I'll deep dive them. I got this fucking shit ass trip. They just assigned me like an hour ago. I have to be at the airport 6 a.m. And usually our red eyes are built with like 27-hour layover in between. So you can get there, you can nap, you can go see the city, you can come home, you can nap, and then you do your thing. It's not a 27-hour layover, it's a 12-hour layover. So I land in Phoenix, I think it's Phoenix, at like noon. And then I have to catch the next flight out at midnight to come back to Philly. And then walk in the door with my 5 and 8-year-old, wanting to climb all over me like a jungle gym. I'm not gonna be able to sleep. This is gonna be shit. So save me a little bit of work, guys. Give me some submissions for Tuesday trends. Tips for the week. We're gonna get into like the waiver wire portion of the show here. There's not a single team through the first 4 days of the match, like of your matchup next week, Monday through Thursday, that have more than 2 games. So you really have to break this week up in terms of streaming standpoint into very strategic segments. And I love Calgary. They're the only team with a back-to-back Monday, Tuesday. And then if you can double dip on a Washington or a Vegas, they both have 3 off nights to finish the week after that Monday, Tuesday. Vegas, obviously, with the perfect schedule, as we like to call it. If you grab a Vegas player for one of those stream spots, if you get a Vegas player for the other stream spot, if you have 2, I always like to rock with 2. If you can get Calgary Monday, Tuesday, then move over to one of those 2 teams, and then even switch your Calgary player to somebody that plays Friday, Sunday, like Vegas, Washington, Nashville. That's 4 transactions you're making. You can get 11 or 12 games if you double dip on Vegas and Washington Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, all off nights. You're going to add 12 games with your 4 pickups. Each pickup is going to get you 3 extra games. That's huge. This is a week that only has 49 games. So if you can edge out your opponent like close to 60 games, huge. Like that's nothing but money. I think the highest I've seen is like 55 games played for 1 week. But this is a really, really good streaming week. Like Monday, Tuesday, you can look at Coleman, Sharangovich. I always want to call him Sharangovich, and I'm just fucking with people at this point. But it's such a fun word, Sharangovich. Tyson Barrie got some power play time on ice against Edmonton earlier last week. I don't think there's a ton there, but it was worth bringing up. Rasmus Anderson was on that unit too. Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, you can look at Dylan Strome, who's a just go check territory at like 68%. McMichael skyrocketing, and for good reason, and Alexei Protas at 16% when I wrote this one. William Karlsson's on Vegas at 37, Barbashev, Dorofiev, guys that you can double dip Friday, Sunday, even Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So there's a way to add 12 games to your week next week if you have 2 streaming spots.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of guys there that we're going to touch on a little bit as we go through the schedule part in a little bit. But exactly right. Trying to maximize. You only have a finite number of moves and you have a finite number of roster spots that you can play around with, because a lot of your team is probably baked in at this point. So when we're talking about maybe a tip for this week, we spend a lot of time looking at optimal schedules and streamers, but typically it's with like a 1 week sort of a short lens in front of us. And when you look at the fantasy season being basically 21 weeks, start to look at that more in like 3 or 4 week chunks. And you can target potential teams for trade opportunities. Like, trades aren't just for long-term ads. We always look about and talk about splashy trades or, moving big producers back and forth, especially in leagues that really don't have limitations. But you can forget some of the 3 a.m. waiver wire junk. Like, just go shopping on some of the other GM's rosters in your league instead. There's going to be value and underperforming players with strong schedules coming up over beyond the week in front of you. So you carve those 21 weeks up of that regular season into 5 or 6 or 7, 3 to 4 week blocks, and you isolate the teams that stand out for off nights, strength of schedules, back to back. We're starting to get an understanding of who's good, who's average, and who's weak at this point, and you plan your attack. So let's come with some receipts. Let's look at the next month, right? Carolina, Detroit, Washington, Vegas, and San Jose. They all play 15 games. They all have a high amount of off nights. San Jose, you can probably surf the wire for the most part, save for Granlund and a few other people. Carolina and Washington, they have really heavily owned cores, and you either own those guys, the rest of the team you probably don't really want any part of in terms of streaming. So that leaves Detroit and Vegas, who do provide a few options. So potential targets here could be, again, back to what we were looking for. These are hot teams. I mean, sorry, Vegas is a hot team. Detroit certainly has been a little bit mid. But for Vegas, right, who hasn't been doing well on a team that has been? And the answer there is Thomas Hertl hasn't been great, certainly over the last, I don't think he's scored in about 2.5 weeks. Shea Theodore's been a bit weak as well, right? The cardinal rule, there can only be one Vegas defenseman doing well at any given point in time. And it hasn't been Theodore.
Yeah,
that's right. So you look at Vegas and say, okay, a GM holding those 2 players, not having a great time right now. And looking at Detroit, Larkin, we talked about, he's doing really well. But Kane, DeBrincat, Raymond, they're doing okay, DeBrincat and Raymond. But again, are those owners super satisfied with where they drafted those players and what they're doing? Again, they play 15 games over the next 4 weeks, a lot of off nights. So you can overvalue what they're going to do for you, because you don't necessarily going to own this player for the entire season. This is a 3 to 4 week hold. So if you've got players that have weaker schedules coming up as well, that are maybe coming off a bit of a heater, that's what we're looking to swap out, right? Rinse, repeat. You can almost treat one of your roster spots. You just mentioned it actually in your tip as well. You can treat one of your roster spots as sort of a flexible, kind of a fungible trade option. Like in addition to your weekly ads, these are different ways that you can stack on top of each other to modify your roster, like in multiple ways during the week, because everybody knows how many moves they can make and feel that that's the limiting factor. And you can make a lot of trades to just add around the periphery of your roster. So maybe think a little bit unconventionally about how you want to add those players for the teams you're targeting, because trades might just be a way to do it. And you can slide a lot of unassuming trades underneath the radar for players like Hurdle and Theodore and, Kane, where, it's a depth player on your bench, but like you're going to get all of what they're going to do over the next month on the score sheet. So if you're going to roll the dice on anybody, you might as well hand pick the person you want to do it.
That brought up a great note, and I just wrote it down so that I don't forget it. But a feature for the game grid on FHFhockey.com would be awesome. Is like having a little sidebar with next 4 weeks, totals, game played, off nights, things like that. So it would be easier to plan ahead. And further to your point, if you continue to rinse and repeat these good next 4 week schedules for guys that have poor, like if you look at the worst next 4 week schedules, trade one of those hot guys that you were talking about and get yourself a slow start with some promise, or underperforming kind of guy with some promise who's going to play a shit ton. That's a way to keep yourself in the red, black. Which one's good? I feel like black's the good one, right?
Black's the good one.
There you go. Keep yourself in the black. So let's get into the schedule. I'm going to pop up the where is it? There we go. The game grid here.
Grid. I think Jay and I struggled with this last week, but when you're able to throw that up, it makes us be able to just breeze through. Do
you think it's easy? Because this one's kind of small. Should I put up the site? Because then we can scroll and kind of talk that way. That might be a little easier.
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. You're the one doing it.
There we go. All right. So stop screen share. But the games played leaders: Vegas, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, Nashville, St. Louis, and Seattle. They have 4 games. The teams with 4 off nights in 4 games, that's Vegas, 4 games, 3 off nights, Carolina, Pittsburgh, and Nashville, 3 games, 3 off nights, Washington, Calgary, Colorado, 4 games, 2 off nights, Vancouver, St. Louis, and Seattle. So, kind of going back to your tip, the off nights and the games played volume starts to happen this week. So a lot of those teams you were talking about, Carolina, Detroit, Washington, Vegas, San Jose, 15 games over the next 4 weeks. We're going to be talking about those guys tonight. Guys you can even pick up off the waiver wire to kind of hold for a little bit. So let's kick it off. I'm going to sort the game grid by score. And
just while you're doing that, yeah, TJ, we talk a lot about heavy nights and off nights. Take a look on your Thursday. So Thursday is classified as a heavy night. It's 10 games. So there's 20 teams playing. So that means there's 12 teams that aren't. So Thursday, if you have a team that's showing up on one of these grids, like I'm just looking at it quickly, Vancouver's got a Thursday night game. Nashville's actually only heavy night game is the Thursday night. So you might be able to get that Thursday night game in a lot of cases. So just consider that like literally set and check.
So one of the features of this game grid is it takes off nights into consideration. It takes that game and it multiplies it by half. So it counts for 150%. And if you take out Saturday, the actual heavy night here, 12, that's where Nashville jumps up to second place team. That's Washington's right up there too. So, I mean, otherwise you're looking at Carolina as a, quote unquote, one of the best teams, but you take that Saturday away that Carolina does play on, and that's where things start to change. Nashville, Calgary, Carolina down here now. So Washington kind of jumps up because they do have that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3-3, where Calgary to Washington would be a great move this week. Well, let's get into it. Target or avoid. I want to talk about some back-to-back goalie streams, kind of like a easy speed round 0G. So we're going to talk about teams and their opponents, and I just want to know if you're either avoiding this as a 0G goalie stream or if you're going to target this one. Calgary's going to play Los Angeles and Vancouver. Either half of that back-to-back, are you going to target Dustin Wolf, Dan Vladar, either one?
No, I don't want either part of that.
Fair enough. I'm right there with you. Tuesday, Wednesday, Toronto plays Ottawa and Washington. Stolars and Woll are both pretty highly owned, so I feel like this one's kind of moot, but would you be targeting if they are out there?
I mean, if they were, yeah, you would target. I guess Wool would be the one that would probably be able to be owned. But yeah, I don't think in any league of substance they're going to be available. And truthfully, I mean, again, like both those teams score goals. Ottawa scores goals.
Yep.
Washington scores goals.
Just put up 8. Yeah.
Exactly.
Tough.
Like I don't necessarily know if I'd be going. And again, you're getting like a game. You're burning an ad to get a game.
Yep. And if we were using all 4 ads on skaters, you can get 12 games this week. And if you have to do 0G stuff, you're losing out on some of those skater streams. Thursday, Friday, Nashville. I feel like the conversation kind of ends there, but they're going to play Edmonton and Calgary. Are we thinking about, who is it? Scott Wedgwood? Yeah. I see you shaking your head. I'm right there with you.
That's a hard no.
Friday, Saturday, we got 3 teams that are playing back-to-back. Pittsburgh's got Columbus, San Jose. Columbus, also with a back-to-back, plays Pittsburgh, Montreal. Detroit has Anaheim and Los Angeles Kings. So this actually might be where the value is if we're thinking about goalie streams this week. Pittsburgh playing 2 weaker-ish opponents. Columbus, same deal. Everybody's kind of in the same weight class here. But
yeah, I kind of like that.
Stick out to you?
I mean, the Columbus pair actually jumps out at me a bit. With Pittsburgh on the front end and Montreal on the back end. I think either of those opponents is a good stream, and Columbus can punch above their weight every now and then. So I certainly wouldn't mind either piece of that. Detroit, both those goalies are fairly available too. So if you can get the Anaheim front end, that looks decent. San Jose isn't quite the easy out they were before. It's not like they're losing and not scoring. You might beat them, but they're probably going to put a few by you. So maybe the front end of that with Columbus and the Pittsburgh. But again, who are you streaming with Pittsburgh? There's 3 guys that could potentially be in the net.
Jari coming back.
Right. So, I mean, maybe you're almost looking at the Columbus goalie, like I say, on eyeing up the Pittsburgh side of that.
I think I lean Detroit, so I'm right there with you. Right here, we got the back-to-backs. I like you said, Cam Talbot, 58% rostered. Alex Lyon, injured right now, so Ville Husso did get the absolute ass whooping tonight against the New York Rangers. But if Lyon's back, I like him because I do feel like Los Angeles
start, tonight.
It was, yeah. It happened also quickly.
It really did. Yeah, I've got Shesterkin in the listener league, and I thought that was penned in, but evidently not.
That was quick. I feel like Los Angeles can give us, like, they're a Jekyll and Hyde, right? Like, I don't know what kind of team we're going to get out of, or like what kind of game we're going to get out of them on a night-to-night basis. So I think I might chance Lyon against one of those guys. But, the Tarasov, Merzlikins thing, you might be able to pull it off because I do like either one of those games. Saturday, Sunday, we're looking at Vancouver, St. Louis, Carolina, and Seattle with back-to-backs, Carolina, Kochetkov, and I guess Spencer Martin versus Ottawa or St. Louis. Vancouver, you got Lankinen and Shilovs against Chicago, Nashville. Something tells me we're going to get Demko, a surprise Demko game this week. It might be. We'll see. But it's just my gut talking right now. St. Louis has Boston and Carolina, and Seattle has the Rangers and the Islanders in their set of back-to-backs. Anything here sticking out to you?
I mean, if the stars aligned with the St. Louis start in Carolina, where you could stream, that could be an option. I don't really want to play anybody against Ottawa, even if they win. Vancouver, no, because I just don't trust Shilovs at all to do anything. Seattle, maybe the Islanders side of it. Again, whether it's Grubauer starting or St. Louis again. Hofer got lit up the last start he had to. Both those teams. Boston actually doesn't look very scary. So maybe if Hofer gets the Boston start, it's the front end for St. Louis, and they got a bit of gas maybe there. But like we just said, what do you like? All these goalies. There's nobody here we've talked about twice. Yeah. Right. So you just, I mean, unless you absolutely have to, and then like we said, you've painted yourself into the, a 0G corner where you're going to have to use ads that you need to prioritize skaters on off nights this week. If you have to prioritize any of those towards streaming goalies that are going to give you one start, that's a bad spot to be in.
What I will say, though, is like goalies for a 1-game spot start tend to have higher payouts if you get lucky. But again,
it's more volatile. That's right.
Yeah. So tonight for me with Binnington, it was like minus 13 points or some shit. So, I mean, if you're going for a set like a Sunday Hail Mary, and I mean, Sunday's got 4 games, so there might be some skaters out there too. But if you need like that 20-point push, if your goalie weights are that high, I could see, like, I hate all of these. Maybe against Nashville with Vancouver, might be your easiest one because Vancouver is favored by my model here, apparently by 78%. That's wild. Um, no idea the reason behind those numbers. But
Yeah, I would say my
anyway,
model says she loves his hot garbage, so I don't think I'm going to
yeah.
start that that back half.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to get goalie starts factored into the weights here yet, but let's get into some waiver wire material, some drop candidates, and some long term ads here. For my drop candidates, and I mean, I've spoken about Wyatt Johnston quite a bit, whether it's on Tuesday Trends or the weekend preview or just in the Discord, what have you. Rupe Hintz also makes this list because I think Dallas is kind of they're turning into the midpoint of like what St. Louis and the Islanders are trying to do. They're successful at it where they're spreading the time and they're playing a defensive and they're keeping like these low event games from getting away from them. But it's starting to lower the ceilings on a lot of these guys that were pretty high on. Wyatt Johnston might be the first guy that gets the cut, but in 12 team leagues, I think I'm still holding on. So Wyatt Johnston isn't hitting my waiver wire in 12ers. If you're in an 8 or a 10, I can see cutting bait because those waiver wires are typically usually flush. I think Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be somebody that we're pitching as well. I would hold him for the Monday Tuesday, but outside of that, I think we're ready to cut bait on Johnny Hoobs. My D suggestions for drop candidates or the chopping block. I've got OEL here, Luke Hughes, who is 50% rostered at this point, and Devon Tays. Devon Tays is firmly on my chopping block. I'm not dropping him yet because I know what's there. I know who he has been, and I think it's going to get back to a point that's close to where he has been. And he just feels unbelievable, the start that he's having. Luke Hughes, a lot of what he was able to put together last year with his totals were power play points, and he's not power play one. So it's just the recipe's not there. OEL, man, I'm fucking tired of you, bro. I can't wait for Vince Dunn to get back, and I can drop your ass. There's nobody else on the waiver wire for me. For D, that's the only reason you're on my fucking team, and I can't wait for you to go away.
Yeah, that's thin on the D. I mean, we talk about drop candidates, and the first thing I think of is teams. And we went back to the schedule there. Plug in your scheduler for the next 2 weeks, and then just sort for who plays the least amount of games and who plays the least amount of off nights. So if we throw that in the next 2 weeks, we got a handful of teams here that really have brutal schedules. So all these teams only play 5 games. They have 1 off night or less. Minnesota, Tampa Bay, New Jersey, and Chicago. So 5 games, 1 off night, 2 weeks, 2 calendar weeks, 10% of your season. So who can we jettison? Because there's going to be players on these teams you're going to hold on to still, right? But who can we get rid of? And a couple of these teams, like Minnesota's been a streamer darling over the past week or two, certainly this past week. But your Marco Rossi's, your Marcus Johansson, Jonas Brodin, Marcus Foligno, those guys are all streamer level players that when they're only going to play twice, and you might not even play them on those nights because they're heavy nights, they're dead weight on your roster. You got to drop them. Tampa Bay, Anthony Cirelli, Nick Paul, JJ Moser, like those guys are all going to be taking up space on your roster. Right over to New Jersey, where you left off with Hughes. He's definitely qualifying in this category, but Andre Palat, Eric Howla, Brendan Dillon, Dawson Mercer. Again, I thought about saying a Paul Cotter, but in bang leagues, he's still bringing it. So, you might want to hold off. But again, are you going to play him? You have to set your lineup and check it. Chicago, same boat. Bertuzzi, Teravainen, even Donato and Foligno. Like in bangs leagues, they're bringing it, but they're at least worth a discussion because that's a lot of zeros and very valuable space on your roster. So I set it, check it, and make sure you're actually getting value from those guys. If you aren't, fire them into the sun and get people that are.
There you go. A couple of long-term ads that I'm looking at, despite the schedules they may have. I feel like Connor McMichael has got to be on waiver wires. I think it's in like half of leagues he's available. But thinking back to the teams that Maddie was talking about earlier, with these good next month schedules, that is what's going to be something I want you guys to pay attention to as we're talking about these waiver wire guys. But Alex Laferriere is somebody that, despite any schedule that he's having, I think needs to be on rosters. Troy Terry's heating up. Anaheim is notorious for their off nights. I feel like I would rank him the least valuable of these 3, but McMichael's got to be on your team. Laferriere has to be there. And Troy Terry, I could see him being a fringe kind of guy. Shall we move into the waiver wire material, our ads for this week? Ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do this. We got a bunch of teams here that we're going to go
Yep.
through. So we start with the best schedules, obviously, and work our way down through. So, TJ, let's start in Vegas.
Yeah, man, we're going to get this done in 15 minutes. So,
This is rapid
Vegas.
fire.
Yeah, we're going to do this rapid fire style. Vegas is going to be one of the teams that, number one, has that best next month schedule, but also has a perfect schedule this week. And I think Ivan Barbashev has got to be the guy that you just go check on. He's 65% rostered, center left wing, playing on that top line with the red hot Jack Eichel. He's red hot himself. And, Nick Waugh seems to be fitting in pretty well. And I think Waugh, you got here, he's a solid ad for deployment, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's right. With Stone out, we talked about it a little bit earlier. He's getting a lot more ice time. He had that big first game with the expanded role. So center right wing, not really going to matter because he plays all on off nights. So or the dual eligibility really probably doesn't matter for him. But either way, a good streamer, 2% owned. I think we're going to see that number climb significantly because they don't play this weekend. They don't play on Monday. So the only thing that people are going to see in terms of the last sample size for Nicholas Waugh is the monster game he put up on Friday.
Speaking of that, the kind of a deterrent when it comes to schedules, William Karlsson center only, but again, all off nights. So you're going to be able to play him. He's point per game since he's come back, 6 games, 6 points, 13 shots, so over 2 shots a game. Usually that's not something I say that's a positive, but his ownership actually went down in the days since I've written this. I think I wrote it this morning. It was 37, so it went down. That's surprising. I even put here in bold, check his roster percentage again. It probably went up. I was wrong. So people are sleeping right there on Karlsson, but Dorofeev is another one that is worth checking out. He leads the team in goals right now. He's got 40 shots on goal through 14 games played. And my first instinct would have been there's no way he leads the team in shots when Jack Eichel's on the team, but he leads the team in shots. He's got 40. Eichel's got 36. So you really need to check out Dorofeev. Like goals are going to be, if you're in your points league, they're going to be weighted higher. They're harder to come by in Cats leagues. He's 24% rostered, and he would kind of headline Vegas for me in terms of where I would prioritize guys. I think Karlsson's another guy that jumps out pretty high. All right, Carolina. That's one of the next teams that's number one in that 4-week stretch that Maddie was talking about, but also has a really good schedule this week. Jack Roslovic is like super lowly owned and is worth talking about. I think he's on the top line right now. He's firing shots like nobody's business. And he's 12% rostered. When I wrote this, he was 6% rostered, and that's doubled since I wrote it. Center right wing, so you get a little bit of flexibility there if you need it. But I'm 9 goals. He also leads his team in goals, even with the red hot Nietzsche's up there. Never really been a shooter like this before, but he's certainly a shooter like this right now. So you got to ride on sustainability while it's happening. Who else
great
do you like on this team?
too.
Anybody?
Right, for him.
Yeah.
And he has pedigree. I believe he was U.S. national team product as well, and was a really high converter in the past. But I mean, you're not going to get a ton of opportunity as a depth role in Columbus. So Carolina obviously saw something there, and they're giving him opportunity. And I don't think he's going to keep converting at the rate he is right now, but stay in the Flames with him, especially with that schedule. Yeah, Carolina's got a great looking opportunity next week.
Carolina's one of the ones that is harder when it comes to these fringe guys. Like you said, the core is kind of gobbled up. It drops off hard
Really
after
is,
Brent
yeah.
Burns. So it goes from like 99% Sebastian Aho, 98% Svechnikov, all the way down. And then the next highest, it goes from 67% to 17. And that's a Brent Burns to Dmitry Orlov drop off. So the core is 100% owned. Long-term ads from Carolina scare the piss out of me just because Rod Brindamore is a blender when it comes to his line combinations. 1 or 2 games from Jack Roslovic that are slow or a bad turnover or what have you. Who knows what Brindamore is going to do. So I kind of stay away from the long-term streams when it comes to Carolina for that reason. But again, if we're talking about unsustainability, Dmitry Orlov does need to come up. He is doing the damn thing. I tend to lean towards D on heavy nights because that's where I find my open spots lie. I would go Verslavik before I would go Orlov, but if you find yourself in a spot that you need a D, then Orlov is he's a good place to look. He's hitting, doing a little bit of blocking, but if you need blocks, Slavin's your guy.
Yeah,
I don't
so
really
there's
have anybody
something
else in
there, right?
Carolina.
No, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I can take us over through Pittsburgh here. Some familiar
Yeah.
faces. We talk about these guys a fair amount. Certainly when Pittsburgh has opportunity to stream, because they're pretty top heavy too, right? Outside of a handful of guys, there's a lot of folks that are available. So the question is, do you want to own any of them? And, the primary filter to that is they have a good schedule this week. So you're going to get whatever it is they happen to do over the next 3 or 4 games of production. So who's actually doing anything there? Rickard Raquel, center right wing, 35%. You can probably get him. So he's got good deployment, playing up on line 1, power play 1 as well too. Brian Rust did come back last night. Was it Friday or Thursday? Either way, whatever game they played last. Yeah, right wing, 42%. He's probably available. Came back Friday. He was on line 2 at even strength, but he was on the top power play. He got an assist, took 5 shots, threw a hit. He was on the ice for 18 minutes. He was on the ice for 60% of the power play time too as well. So he's up there on that top unit. So I think you can't go wrong with either of those two guys because they're playing with Sid and Gino on the power play. And you got Grizzlick on here too. So we were talking about that. Is that like maybe just a small sample size, or maybe they'll try something kind of wild?
Grizzlick feels like a needle in a needle stack. Like, no, it's going to be hard to
find.
How
deep is your league where this is a viable conversation?
I think maybe 16 teamers is where I would start to pull the trigger on Grizzlick. Like if it's really brutal out there, right? Like, I don't know. That feels like trying to teach a lesson to Letang or something. It doesn't feel real. So I'm not sold on Grizzlick as a long-term power play 1 option there at all. Vancouver is the next team that's worth talking about in terms of week-long ads. This is a team where they at? They've got 4 games, 2 off nights. So we're doing a little bit of dipping into the lower kind of tier off night guys. But Jake DeBrusk seems to have found a rhythm as well. Elias Pettersson scored again tonight. So hopefully the monkey is fully off the back there. Connor Garland, also somebody worth talking about. That's kind of turning a corner, I guess, like maybe a renaissance season from him. But he's doing it, and Kiefer Sherwood is an absolute bang daddy that throws hits like nobody's business. So
yeah, he's top
those
like
are the guys
what
there.
3 in the league in hits. Like he's
I mean
way
Luke Shen and Lazan are probably those are the
but he's way up there. And Vancouver, they're one of those teams you mentioned. They we said they have 2 off nights, but they do play on Thursday, so you might be able to get that game in for them.
Kiefer Sherwood, number 1 in hits.
Number 1.
10. Yeah. He's got Lazan beat by 10 hits in 2 last games. So that's impressive.
And he's a forward too. Like that's
left wing, right wing with 7 points to boot.
Banger gold right there.
25. Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of gold going down to Nashville other than on their jerseys. So, I mean, we do just go check Ryan O'Reilly. 53%. We talked about him last week.
So yeah, this is the speed round. So I'm gonna throw some guys at you, and if you don't mind, just rank them out for me. We'll get this one cooking in the books. So Nashville, in terms of their forwards, you got Juuso Parssinen, who right now is centering Stamkos. I think that was like the most recent guy that's doing it. Nyquist is, he's got some sort of deployment, and ROR at 53%. So that feels like kind of a cop out. But if it was Nyquist and Parssinen, where would you go?
I think you have to go Nyquist because he's shown us that he's done it before. But I got to tell you, his last week, like he put up 3 just absolute incredible eggs, like -2 every game, added absolutely nothing. So this week he might turn it around with a couple goals on a bunch of shots because he does have those weeks too. And he's about the only ownable piece of that lineup that you're actually going to get. So, I mean, if it's just about maximizing games and you can't really control what he's going to actually do once he's out there. It's worth a stream. I would just factor in the confidence level of what he's been doing this year. And they added more shooters to a team that had a lot of shooters. So he's going to get his, but it's not going to be quite at the level it was before. So just, manage expectations.
I learned the hard way that off nights does not guarantee, like, you're adding games played, but it doesn't mean that you're adding points. So Nyquist was,
Diminishing returns for sure.
yeah, a lesson learned there. All right, Washington, Dylan Strome is going to be your guy. If he's out there, Connor McMichael is going to be right back, like right behind him. Last call on him, 53% rostered right now. Let's talk some of the guys that are probably available. I guess Tom Wilson would be a just go check too at 50%, but Alexi Protas, PLD at 19%. How would you rate those guys? Or
Protoss, I
rank, I
mean,
guess.
yeah, I would rank Protoss over PLD. I know PLD's got more of a career behind him, but Protoss, quite honestly, has been more exciting. I like who he's playing with. I don't think you're going to get Wilson, and I don't think you're going to get McMichael. So I think we're talking about a few of the periph guys that are available there, and then I would have Protoss ever so slightly above PLD in terms of streamer quality for that team.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Protoss, 4 goals, 4 assists in his last 7 games, and McMike, 5 goals on 29 shots. Like, he's looking incredible.
Remember,
if we're talking about
the
riffs,
Flames, garbage power
go.
play. They're doing all of this at even strength. Yeah.
Marty Fevs is somebody to look at for periffs, and Sandine, both on D, looking really good in the periph department. Calgary, this team has 3 games, 3 off nights. So let's talk about ranking some of these guys. Kuzmenko, Sharangovich, and I guess Blake Coleman, because Kadri is going to be a little more owned. But how would you rank those guys?
Yeah, I think Kadri is going to be owned. I'm a Blake Coleman lover. I've had him as at least once as a streamer of the week here. So I mean, selfishly, I think I'd be leaning Coleman. I know it's the line 3 deployment, but like, he gets his minutes and he's impactful when he's out there. Like, if you actually spend some time watching Calgary games, like every time Blake Coleman's on the ice and his line's out there, you notice they're on the ice. And you can't say that for a lot of other players on that team, but Blake Coleman, every time he's out there, you seem to notice when 20's floating around. So I would have Coleman, and he's got some good eligibility. I think he's center right wing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, you got it.
For Coleman. So I like that over, I believe, Nazi's straight center. If you can get Kadri different, but Coleman I like, Sharangovich, and then Kuzi.
There you go. I'm right there with you. And you'll notice that I very intentionally left Huberdeau off this list because...
Thank you.
Yep, not into it anymore. And same thing for Popsicle, man. He's straight zeros except for hits. Yeah, I'm over it. All right, Colorado. Just go check on Arturi Lehkonen. This is definitively last call for Lehkonen. It was 60% when I wrote this. I'm going to check the ownership once more just to see how high it's gone up in, I don't know, what, 7 hours? 1%. Okay. So it went up a little bit, but Val Nichushkin's going to be back on Friday. If you want to burn a roster spot, I think it's very viable to do so. If he's still on your waiver wire, he's 58% rostered. There's not much out there in terms of streamers, but Middlestat is 44% rostered. That's literally the only guy that I have here for streaming. Is there any other value outside of Middlestat for this week?
It really doesn't feel like it, no. And I mean, again, they don't have the optimal schedule. They have about the 8th best schedule. So you combine that with, you know, again, a really shallow talent pool there. Val coming back is a big deal. We talked about that. It's going to take him some time to acclimate, but I think that's going to reshape what their top 6 looks like, what the top power play looks like, and in turn, what we can look at from evaluation from a guy like Lehkonen, right? Because right now, he's a more valuable option than he will be in a week. And we'll see what that looks like in a month. But I find Colorado, we talk about the same 2 or 3 players because outside of them, in terms of streaming viability, there's literally nobody else.
Yeah, super top heavy when it comes to roster ownership. And, you know, same as Carolina that we were talking about before. St. Louis, I got a few guys here that are worth talking about. And I was just checking. They're not one of those teams that are over the next 4 weeks. But Buchnevich, 54% rostered. So that one's a just go check. But then there's Justin Falk, Braden Shen, Jake Neighbors. St. Louis has 4 games, 2 off nights this week. And it looks like like they've got a couple against Boston that could go either way. But how would you rate Falk, Shen, Neighbors?
I think it would matter the type of league that you're in, because obviously Booch is going to drive some very different cats than somebody like, Neighbors or Falk might. So if
Mhm.
you're anything that sort of, leans towards banger settings, or the points are skewed towards bangers, I think a guy like Shen becomes really valuable, dual eligible. So you might be able to fit him in on one of those semi heavy nights that we talked about when he's got more than one position he can play. Same with Neighbors. Both those guys at 15%. I mean, it kind of just speaks to how hot and cold that they've been.
Oh yeah.
Um, Buchnevich is always a tough hold for me. Again, he's either going to spark and give you that 2 goals and 3 shots type of a night, or you don't get much. So, just for me in the leagues that I play in, I'd probably be ranking these players Shen. I'd have Booch and Neighbors as a bit of a toss up, depending on how bang heavy I needed to be, and then Falk if you needed help on the back end.
Yep. I'm not far off. I might have Booch a little higher just based on minutes played and things like that. But St.
Yeah,
Louis is a very
I've been
strange team.
hurt before, TJ, and I can't.
Jaded in St. Louis. Seattle, there's no sense ranking these guys because I think Matty Beniers might be the only one worth talking
I
about. He's
think that's about it.
15% rostered. There's going to be riffs here, though, like Adam Larson, Riker Evans, Jamie Alexiak, even Yanni Gord. Like I would love for Yanni Gord to see some deployment. He's got 14 hits and is like 2 hits a game over the last 2 weeks, a block a game. The shots are okay, but it's just he's doing nothing when it comes to offense whatsoever. So if he got going, I would love to talk about him. But like right now, he's a peripheral stream. Even the guys like Brandon Tanev, lots of peripherals to have here. Ty Kartai, Will Borgen, um, tons of periffs. But I think if you're looking for offense, Beniers might be the only guy. So let's get into streamer of the picks, streamer of the week picks. And I love this new rule you've come up with. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so we were talking about how we keep the streaming picks a little bit spicy throughout the season. And one of the things that kind of dawned on me was, we're making these recommendations pretty much exclusively for you to be able to weave these players in and out of the core of your lineup. So the production that they have throughout the course of the week, you're going to have teams like Vegas who have that perfect week every now and then where every single game they play is on an off night. But you're also going to have weeks where a team might play 3 or 4 games and maybe only 2 or 3 of those games are on an off night. So what we want to do is we wanted to really isolate the production that players are giving you on the off nights as opposed to on the heavy nights. So if Matty Beniers we just talked about, if he pops off and they have a great deployment week, but like he gives you nothing and nothing, and then he puts a Hattie up on a Saturday night, that's
Yeah,
probably not going to help you because you
I was
probably
on your
didn't have
bench.
space. That's right. So what we're going to do is we're going to double the value of the points for players on off nights. And that way we're going to get, I think, a bit of a better accurate or a more accurate representation of, who helped you on the nights where you actually needed that help.
There you
Because
go.
nobody wants to see their bench outscore their roster.
No. And I'm actually going to do a last minute switch here. And I'm
Here we
not going to take
go.
William Carlson. And I'm going to switch to Dorofiev as my streamer pick of the week. I have Roslavik in the number 2 position. I think I would have Carlson at number 3, but I'm going to go with Dorofiev.
Both of those picks are strong. Schedule looks good. Deployment for both of them is good. I can't argue with either of those. And they're hot, right? This is about
Yeah.
staying in the flames. We're talking about a player for a handful of games. We want to see who's doing it right now. So I'm going to go with Brian Rust. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Schedule, deployment, opportunity, all that points in his direction. I know the Pens aren't great, but whatever they are going to do, he's going to be a primary part of it. And he gets to play with 2 pretty elite players up on the power play. So I like that. And my second pick is going to be Jake DeBrusk. I want a piece of that Vancouver schedule.
Yeah, those opponents look
Unfortunately,
really good.
yeah, the opponents look good, and unfortunately, with Besser being out, hopefully it's not too long. But in any way, that's going to give DeBrusk some maybe a few more minutes and some opportunity as well. So hoping it's only short term, but both of those guys I feel fine riding with into next week.
I'll tell you what, a lot of these top teams, they have really good schedules when it comes to opponents like Pittsburgh, Dallas, Detroit, Columbus, San Jose. That's plum. Vancouver, Calgary, New York Islanders, Chicago, Nashville. Come on. If there's any week to turn it around Vancouver, it's this week. And Vegas, not so bad too. They've got Anaheim, Utah, Washington, a couple tough games, but those off nights I think are going to help me and Dorofiev take down Brian Rust, who has one less off night. I get double points for an extra night. I'm going to take
my
that
own
one to the
rule.
bank. That's all right. That's integrity right there, ladies and gentlemen. But like I said, we got Tuesday trends coming up later this week. If you want to hop in the Discord or chirp me on Twitter, feel free to do so, because I've got the shittiest trip in the world tomorrow that I've got to work. So if you guys throw some submissions at me, it would be a huge help, and I'll be able to deep dive them on the show Monday night, as long as my wife lets me get some sleep Monday when I get home at like 8 a.m. from working 6 hours, midnight to 6 or whatever. But thanks for listening, guys. That is the week preview. And I'm going to just talk about random shit until I can get to the outro music, so that way I can do some real stuff. There we go. Outro music is ready to rock. If you guys want to find us, we're on Twitter at FHF Hockey. We're in the Fantasy Hockey Discord. It's literally happening 24/7. 2,700 members in there. I think the biggest fantasy hockey Discord that's out there right now. I'm not sure, but I want to say that's accurate. And it's free, which is huge. And you get a bunch of cool stuff and a bunch of cool people. So we'll catch you later this week for Tuesday Trends. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Catch you next time. We love you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. The turd nuggets, I love it.